That's the biggest thing right now. Can you come into a room and actually change it? The other day, a friend of mine sent me a text message and invited me to a men's breakfast. Breakfast is being held at their local restaurant, Denny's. I'm sure some of you have been there. Grand Slam breakfast, right? So I looked at my schedule and it fit into my time that I had available because everybody's busy. So I told him, you know what, bro, I'll be there. Regardless, I'll be there. So when I arrived, I walked into the lobby and I immediately ran into the current pastor of a church that I used to attend years ago. Now, the church was originally led by a pastor I loved dearly, who had a shepherd's heart, who loved people, who encouraged people, and built strong relationships. I'm a witness of that. And Pastor Locke is his name. He had a way of bringing out the best in others. Many strong men, me included, grew under his leadership. And part of the reason was that when you were around him, you felt seen. You I felt valued. I felt challenged in ways that is normally not challenged. And years ago, when he became seriously ill and was hospitalized, there were some leadership decisions made that I struggled with. And there was one particular meeting I remember that was called while he was sick. Now, I thought that we were all gathering to pray for our pastor, but instead, it became clear that the focus was on who would lead in his absence. And to be honest, there were things that happened during that season that I didn't agree with. So when I saw the current pastor standing in the lobby, there was history there. We shook hands. We exchanged a brief half hug. And then he walked towards the back room where the breakfast was being held. So I stood in the lobby looking for the friend who had invited me. And the hostess comes out and she points me to the back room and says, "Hey, all the men they're back there." Okay. So when I walked in this room, there was about 12 men seated around the table, including the pastor. I found a seat and simply started doing what I normally do. I encouraged people. I started talking, having conversations, listening to people, laughing and building relationships, just being myself. So as the breakfast continued, I could feel a little tension coming from across the room. I mean, maybe I was imagining it, maybe I wasn't. But either way, listen, I wasn't there to prove anything. I was there to fellowship with some other men that are all wrestling with things too. The waitress eventually came to the table and asked, "Will this be one check or separate checks?" And someone at the head of the table quickly answered, "Separate." So the conversations continued, the food came, the fellowship grew. Then something unexpected happened. As I sat there listening to the conversations around the room, I felt the Holy Spirit speak to my heart. That wasn't audibly, it wasn't dramatically, it was just a simple impression. Pick up the tab. Pick up the tab. Not for one man, not for two men, for everybody, every man at the table. Immediately, my mind started doing what it does. 12 breakfasts. Okay, God, we'll do it. But the prompting that I was feeling, it just wouldn't go away. Because sometimes you hear the God speaking to you and you're wondering, okay, is this just my thought or is this the thought of God? I knew it was God speaking to me. So I knew what I was supposed to do. So I had to leave a little earlier because my daughter had a soccer game. So I stood up, I said goodbye to everybody, and headed towards the front. Now, before I left, I was looking around. I found our waitress, and quietly, without making an announcement, I told her, I said, listen, I'd like to take care of the bill for every man that's in the back room at that table. She said, okay, follow me to the front. So I took care of the tab, then I left. No speech, no explanation, no recognition, just being obedient to what God told me to do. Later that day, messages started coming in. A few men text me, others reached out through Facebook, each one simply saying, thank you. Then I received another message that impacted me even more. One of the men told me that at the breakfast, the group left the waitress a very large tip. And that's when it hit me. The blessing was never just about the men. The blessing was also for the person serving the room. It's amazing how one act of obedience created a ripple effect. 12 men were encouraged. A waitress was blessed. Generosity multiplied. And God received the glory. What I learned that day is something I never want to forget. When God places us in a room, our assignment is not to control the room. Our assignment is to improve the room. Too many people walk into a room asking, how can I be noticed? How can I gain influence? How can I be recognized? But followers of Jesus should be asking different questions. How can I serve? How can I encourage? How can I bless? How can I make God famous? Jesus never entered a room looking for applause. He entered rooms carrying love, truth, healing, and generosity. And every room he entered was different because he was there. And that's the challenge for all of us. Not to own the room, not to dominate the room, not to control the room, but to change the room. To leave people more encouraged, more hopeful, more loved, more connected to God than they were before they arrived. Because the greatest measure of influence is not how many people know your name. It's how many people's lives are better because you obeyed when God asked you to do something. That morning, God didn't ask me to preach. He didn't ask me to lead. He didn't ask me to correct anyone. He simply asked me to be generous. And sometimes the most powerful way to change a room is through a simple act of obedience. So, what will you do today to change the room?